Elena Vasquez walked through the bustling farmers market in downtown Portland, her weathered hands carefully selecting tomatoes. To everyone around her, she appeared to be just another middle-aged woman doing her weekly shopping. Her graying hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a faded denim jacket over comfortable jeans. The vendors smiled warmly at her, recognizing her as a regular customer, who always paid in cash and spoke softly. What none of them knew was that those same hands had once held a Barrett M82 sniper rifle, steady for over 8 hours in the mountains of Afghanistan. The woman they saw buying organic vegetables had spent 15 years as one of the most lethal operatives in modern military history. Elena had retired from active duty 3 years ago, trading her tactical gear for gardening gloves and her secure military base for a small cottage on the outskirts of the city. Her transition to civilian life had been deliberately quiet. The government had provided her with a new identity, complete with a fabricated work history as a librarian. Her neighbors knew her as a kind woman who kept to herself, tended a beautiful garden, and occasionally helped elderly residents with their groceries. She had built this peaceful existence carefully, brick by brick, hoping to leave her past buried in classified files that would never see the light of day. Elena cherished these simple moments at the market, the smell of fresh bread from the local bakery, the sound of children laughing as they chased each other between the stalls, and the gentle rhythm of ordinary life gave her something she had never experienced during her years of service. For the first time in decades, she could sleep through the night without checking the perimeter of her home or keeping a weapon within arm's reach. But peace, Elena had learned, was often temporary. As she paid for her tomatoes and turned to leave, she noticed a man in a dark suit watching her from across the street. He wasn't trying to hide his surveillance, which immediately put her on alert. After years of operating in hostile territory, she could identify a tail from 3 blocks away. This man wanted her to know she was being watched. Elena maintained her casual pace as she walked to her car, but her mind was already shifting into the tactical mode she had hoped to leave behind forever. She placed her groceries in the back seat and drove home using a route that would allow her to determine if she was being followed. The dark sedan stayed exactly 3 cars behind her, confirming her suspicions. Someone from her past had found her, and her carefully constructed civilian life was about to be shattered. Back at her cottage, Elena sat at her kitchen table and stared at the fresh vegetables she had just purchased. They seemed to represent everything she was about to lose. She had always known this day might come, but she had hoped for more time to enjoy the simple pleasures of ordinary life. As the sun began to set, she made herself a cup of tea and waited. Experience had taught her that whoever was watching her would make contact soon. Until then, all she could do was prepare for whatever storm was coming her way. The knock on Elena's door came at exactly 9 o'clock that evening. She had been expecting it, but the sound still sent a chill down her spine. Through the peephole, she saw a woman in her 40s wearing a crisp business suit, flanked by 2 men who were clearly security personnel. Elena recognized the type immediately: government officials who dealt with people like her. She opened the door slowly, keeping her expression neutral. The woman smiled politely and showed her credentials. "Ms. Vasquez, I'm Director Sarah Chen from the Department of Special Operations. We need to discuss a matter of national security with you." Elena stepped aside to let them enter, already knowing that her quiet retirement was officially over. Director Chen and her escort settled into Elena's modest living room, looking somewhat out of place among the floral cushions and family photographs that Elena had carefully arranged to support her civilian identity. "We know who you really are," Director Chen began without preamble. "Sergeant Major Elena Rodriguez, formerly of the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment. Retired after 15 years of distinguished service with a record that remains classified at the highest levels." Elena poured herself another cup of tea, her hands steady despite the circumstances. "That person doesn't exist anymore. I'm just Elena Vasquez, a retired librarian who enjoys gardening." Director Chen opened a thick manila folder and placed several photographs on the coffee table. They showed Elena in military gear, taken during various operations across multiple continents. In one image, she was setting up a sniper position on a rocky outcrop. In another, she was briefing a team of soldiers before a mission. "Your file makes for fascinating reading," Director Chen continued. 73 confirmed eliminations across 12 different countries. Expert marksman with certification on 14 different weapon systems. But what really caught our attention was the incident in Syria 4 years ago. Elena's jaw tightened slightly. She knew exactly which incident they were referring to. That mission was classified beyond your clearance level. Not anymore, Director Chen replied. A terrorist leader was coordinating attacks from a compound in the mountains. Standard intel suggested he was unreachable by conventional means. The distance from the nearest safe position to his location was measured at 3,200 meters. Every military advisor said the shot was impossible. Elena remained silent, but Director Chen pressed on. You took that shot. Single bullet. Perfect conditions had to be calculated for wind speed, temperature, humidity, and the rotation of the Earth itself. The target was eliminated, saving an estimated 2,000 civilian lives in 3 different cities. It remains the longest confirmed precision elimination in military history. The room fell quiet except for the ticking of Elena's antique wall clock. She had never spoken about that day to anyone, not even during her debriefing sessions. The shot had required everything she had learned in 15 years of service, combined with skills that went beyond training into something approaching intuition. Director Chen leaned forward in her chair. We wouldn't be here if we didn't need you, Elena. There's a situation developing that requires someone with your particular expertise. Someone who can make impossible shots when failure means innocent people die. Elena set down her teacup and looked directly at the director. I'm retired. Find someone else. There is no one else, Director Chen replied quietly. What we're facing requires the best marksman alive. According to every expert we've consulted, that person is you. Director Chen reached into her briefcase and withdrew a tablet computer. The screen displayed satellite imagery of a large compound nestled in mountainous terrain. Elena recognized the tactical layout immediately. High walls, multiple guard towers, and strategic positioning that made conventional assault nearly impossible. 3 days ago, a group of international arms dealers took control of a research facility in the Carpathian Mountains. Director Chen explained. They're holding 43 scientists and their families hostage while they attempt to steal classified weapons technology that could destabilize global security. Elena studied the images, her trained eye automatically identifying sightlines, potential hiding spots, and defensive vulnerabilities. Despite her determination to stay retired, she couldn't help analyzing the tactical situation. Local authorities should be able to handle this. The facility is located in a disputed territory where no single government has clear jurisdiction, Director Chen replied. More importantly, the hostage takers have made it clear that any military approach will result in the immediate execution of all civilians. They've already killed 2 guards to prove they're serious. The director swiped to the next image showing detailed floor plans of the facility. The leader of this group is Viktor Kozlov, a former military officer turned arms dealer. He's positioned himself in the facility's main laboratory, surrounded by the most valuable hostages. Intelligence suggests he never leaves this room and always keeps at least 6 civilians within arm's reach. Elena pushed the tablet back, toward Director Chen. This sounds like a job for negotiators and hostage rescue teams, not a sniper. We tried negotiations for the past 72 hours, Director Chen said grimly. Kozlov's demands are impossible to meet. He wants the release of dozens of international criminals and safe passage to a non-extradition country. Even if we agreed, there's no guarantee he would release the hostages. The director showed Elena another image, this one taken from a drone flying high above the facility. The only clear sight line to Kozlov's position is from a ridge approximately 2,800 meters away. The shot would have to pass through a reinforced window and account for significant elevation changes and mountain wind patterns. Elena felt a familiar stirring in her chest, the same feeling she used to get when presented with seemingly impossible missions. She had always thrived on challenges that others deemed unachievable. But she also remembered the sleepless nights, the weight of responsibility, and the toll that 15 years of life and death decisions had taken on her soul. Even if I could make that shot, Elena said carefully, you're talking about an operation in foreign territory without proper authorization. The political ramifications could be severe. Director Chen closed the tablet and looked directly at Elena. Among the hostages are Dr. Sarah. Mitchell and her 8-year-old daughter, Dr. Mitchell, was working on medical research that could revolutionize cancer treatment. Her daughter was visiting the facility during a school holiday. Elena felt her resolve wavering. Throughout her military career, protecting innocent civilians had always been her primary motivation. The idea of a child caught in this situation stirred emotions she had tried to bury along with her military identity. "There's something else," Director Chen added quietly. "Kozlov knows about your retirement and your new identity. Intelligence suggests he specifically chose this location and timing because he knew it would eventually bring you out of hiding. This isn't just about the hostages, it's about you." Elena stood up and walked to her kitchen window, looking out at the garden she had spent 3 years cultivating. The tomato plants she had been planning to harvest next week seemed to represent everything peaceful and normal she was about to leave behind once again. But somewhere in the mountains, a little girl was counting on adults to save her, and Elena knew she couldn't turn her back on that responsibility. Elena found herself on a military transport plane 12 hours later, flying toward a remote airfield in Eastern Europe. She had spent the night going through her old equipment, which the government had secretly stored in a warehouse facility just outside Portland. Her custom rifle, a modified Barrett M82 that had been specifically calibrated for her shooting style, felt both familiar and foreign in her hands after 3 years of civilian life. Sitting across from her on the plane was Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Webb, the tactical coordinator for the operation. He was younger than Elena had expected, probably in his early 30s, with the confident bearing of someone who had studied her military record extensively, but had never actually worked with a sniper of her caliber. "The target window is extremely narrow," Webb explained, spreading detailed topographical maps across the small table between them. "Kozlov only appears at the laboratory window twice per day, once at 800 hours for exactly 90 seconds, and again at 1600 hours for approximately 2 minutes. He uses these times to survey the surrounding area with binoculars." Elena studied the elevation charts and wind pattern data that had been collected over the past week. The shot would require her to account for a bullet drop of nearly 60 feet over the 2,800-meter distance, plus complex wind calculations that changed constantly due to the mountain terrain. "What's the backup plan if I miss?" Elena asked, though she had never missed a target when civilian lives were at stake. Webb shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "There is no backup plan. Intelligence indicates that Kozlov has rigged the laboratory with explosives. Any sign of military assault will trigger a detonation that would kill everyone in the building. Your shot is the only option we have." Elena felt the familiar weight of absolute responsibility settling on her shoulders. 43 lives would depend on her ability to make a shot that most experts considered impossible under ideal conditions, let alone with the additional pressure of knowing that failure meant mass casualties. "There's something else you should know," Webb continued. "We've identified the specific window Kozlov uses for his observations. It's made of reinforced glass designed to stop small arms fire. Your bullet will need to penetrate this barrier and still maintain enough velocity and accuracy to achieve the desired result." Elena examined the technical specifications of the window material. The glass was indeed formidable, but her custom ammunition had been designed for exactly these types of scenarios. The armor-piercing rounds would lose some velocity upon impact, but her calculations suggested they would still be effective at the required distance. As the plane began its descent toward the airfield, Elena noticed Webb watching her intently. "Is there something else, Colonel?" "I've read your entire file," Webb admitted. "Every mission, every after-action report, every commendation. What I don't understand is how someone with your record just walks away from military service to become a librarian in Oregon." Elena packed away the maps and equipment specifications. "Because after 15 years of taking lives to save lives, I wanted to try just saving lives. Books don't shoot back, and library patrons don't have families who mourn them when they don't come home." The plane touched down on a small runway surrounded by dense forest. Elena could see military vehicles waiting to transport them to the staging area near the target location. As she gathered her gear, she realized that the peaceful retirement she had built for herself was now officially over, regardless of how this mission ended. "One more thing," Webb said as they prepared to disembark. "Kozlov has been monitoring communications traffic in the area. He knows we're coming, and he knows who we're bringing. This operation isn't just about saving those hostages. It's about proving that some shots can't be made, even by someone with your reputation." Elena shouldered her rifle case and smiled grimly. "Then he's about to be very disappointed." Elena reached the designated ridge position at 0300 hours, giving herself 5 hours to prepare for the morning shot opportunity. The climb through dense forest and rocky terrain had taken 3 hours, with Elena carrying her full equipment load including the rifle, ammunition, spotting scope, and weather monitoring instruments. Her muscles remembered the familiar strain of mountain operations, even after 3 years away from active duty. The sniper hide she constructed was nearly invisible from below, built into a natural depression among large boulders and camouflaged with local vegetation. Elena had chosen this specific position after studying satellite imagery and elevation data for weeks. It provided the clearest sightline to the target building, while offering concealment and multiple escape routes if the operation went wrong. Through her spotting scope, Elena could see the research facility clearly despite the distance. The building looked deceptively peaceful in the pre-dawn darkness, with only a few lights visible in the windows. She knew that inside 43 innocent people were waiting for rescue, unaware that their lives depended on a single bullet fired from nearly 3 kilometers away. Elena began her shooting calculations, factoring in atmospheric conditions that were constantly changing due to the mountain environment. The temperature was dropping as dawn approached, which would affect both the air density and the performance of her ammunition. Wind speed and direction were measured every 15 minutes using her portable weather station. At 600 hours, Elena received a radio communication from the Tactical Operations Center. Overwatch, this is Command. Latest intelligence confirms target will appear at the designated window at 800 hours. Weather conditions are within acceptable parameters for the shot. Elena responded quietly into her headset microphone. Command, this is Overwatch. I'm in position and ready. Confirm that all hostages are accounted for and located away from the target area. Confirmed, Overwatch. Thermal imaging shows all civilians are currently in the facility's cafeteria, approximately 200 meters from the target location. The subject is alone in the laboratory. Elena spent the next 90 minutes fine-tuning her equipment and running through mental rehearsals of the shot sequence. She had performed this routine thousands of times during her military career, but the stakes had never felt quite this high. The success of the mission, the lives of the hostages, and her own reputation all hinged on the next few minutes. At 7:55 hours, Elena settled into her final firing position. Her rifle was mounted on a bipod and stabilized with sandbags she had carried up the mountain. The weapon was perfectly level and aligned with the target window. Her breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm she had learned during sniper training 15 years earlier. Through her rifle scope, Elena could see the laboratory window clearly. The reinforced glass reflected the morning sunlight, making it difficult to see inside the room. She would have to trust that Kozlov would appear exactly where intelligence predicted, and that her bullet would penetrate the barrier with enough remaining energy to complete the mission. At exactly 0800 hours, a figure appeared at the window. Elena could see Kozlov clearly through her scope, a tall man in military fatigues holding binoculars as he surveyed the surrounding mountains. He seemed confident that his position was secure, unaware that he was being watched by someone with the skills to reach him across nearly 3 kilometers of mountain terrain. Elena controlled her breathing and began the final firing sequence. Her finger found the trigger as she calculated the final adjustments for wind speed and bullet drop. The shot would have to be perfect. There would be no second chance, and failure would result in the deaths of everyone inside the facility. The world became very quiet as Elena prepared to take the shot that would either save 43 lives or haunt her for the rest of her days. Elena's finger squeezed the trigger with the precise pressure she had perfected over thousands of training rounds and dozens of real-world missions. The rifle's recoil was absorbed by her body position and equipment setup, allowing her to maintain visual contact with the target through her scope. The .50 caliber bullet traveled the 2,800-meter distance in approximately 4 seconds, during which Elena held her breath and watched Kozlov through the crosshairs. The reinforced window exploded in a shower of glass fragments as the armor-piercing round penetrated the barrier. Elena saw Kozlov drop from view immediately, confirming that the shot had found its target. Through her radio headset, she heard the Tactical Operations Center erupt in controlled excitement as thermal imaging confirmed the elimination. Overwatch, this is Command. Target is down. Repeat, target is confirmed down. Outstanding work. Elena remained in position, continuing to observe the facility through her scope. Within minutes, she saw movement at various windows as the remaining armed guards inside the building realized their leader was dead. The carefully coordinated assault team, which had been waiting at the base of the mountain, immediately began their approach to the facility. "Command, this is Overwatch. I have visual on 3 armed subjects moving toward the hostage area. They appear to be retreating to defensive positions. Copy that, Overwatch. Assault team is moving in. Maintain Overwatch and provide cover if needed." Elena tracked the assault team's progress through her scope as they approached the facility. The remaining guards, demoralized by the loss of their leader and surprised by the precision of the attack, offered minimal resistance. Within 30 minutes, the tactical team had secured the building and confirmed that all hostages were safe and unharmed. The 8-year-old girl Elena had been thinking about throughout the mission was among the first civilians evacuated from the building. Through her scope, Elena watched as the child ran to her mother's arms in the makeshift medical station that had been established outside the facility. The sight of that reunion made every hour of preparation and every moment of pressure worthwhile. "Overwatch, this is command. All hostages have been secured and are receiving medical attention. The facility has been cleared of all threats. You are cleared to return to base." Elena began the methodical process of packing her equipment and preparing for the long hike back down the mountain. As she disassembled her rifle and secured her gear, she reflected on how naturally she had slipped back into her former role despite 3 years of civilian life. The skills, instincts, and mental discipline that had made her one of the military's most effective snipers were still intact. The descent took longer than the climb, partly due to fatigue and partly because Elena was no longer operating under mission urgency. As she made her way through the forest, she found herself thinking about the cottage in Oregon and the garden she had left behind. Part of her hoped she could return to that peaceful existence, but another part recognized that some responsibilities couldn't be permanently retired. When Elena reached the base camp, she was greeted by Lieutenant Colonel Webb and a full debriefing team. The mission had been declared a complete success, with all objectives achieved and 0 civilian casualties. The weapons technology that Kozlov had been trying to steal was secure, and the hostages were already being transported to safety. "That was an incredible shot," Webb told Elena as she handed over her equipment for inspection and inventory. "The technical analysis shows you compensated perfectly for wind conditions, elevation, and the reinforced glass barrier. Most experts didn't think that shot was even theoretically possible." Elena removed her tactical gear and accepted a cup of coffee from one of the support staff. It wasn't about the shot being possible or impossible. It was about 43 people who needed to go home to their families. As she sat in the debriefing room, Elena realized that her retirement from military service had been based on a false assumption. She had thought she was tired of the responsibility and pressure that came with her unique skills. But the truth was simpler. She had needed time to remember why those skills mattered in the first place. 6 months after the mountain operation, Elena stood in her garden in Oregon, but this time she wasn't alone. Director Chen had kept her promise about finding Elena meaningful work that didn't require her to completely abandon the peaceful life she had built. Elena now served as a consultant for the Department of Special Operations, training the next generation of military snipers and providing expertise for situations that required her unique skills. The arrangement allowed Elena to maintain her civilian identity while contributing to missions that genuinely protected innocent lives. She spent 3 weeks each month at various military training facilities, sharing the knowledge and techniques she had developed over 15 years of service. The remaining time was her own, to tend her garden, shop at the farmer's market, and enjoy the simple pleasures of ordinary life. Elena's cottage had been quietly transformed into a secure location where she could receive classified briefings and communicate with military personnel when needed. To her neighbors, she appeared to have taken a part-time consulting job that required occasional travel. The cover story was close enough to the truth that Elena felt comfortable maintaining the friendships she had built in the community. The most significant change in Elena's life was the presence of Dr. Sarah Mitchell and her daughter, who had become regular visitors to the cottage. Dr. Mitchell had requested permission to meet the person who had saved their lives, and a friendship had developed between the 2 women. Elena found herself serving as an unofficial mentor to the 8-year-old girl, teaching her about gardening, responsibility, and the importance of standing up for people who couldn't protect themselves. "Why did you choose to help us?" Dr. Mitchell asked during one of their weekend visits, as they watched her daughter chase butterflies among Elena's flower beds. Elena considered the question carefully before answering. "For 15 years, I thought my job was about eliminating threats and completing missions. It took retiring and almost losing everything I cared about to realize that my real job was always about protecting people like you and your daughter." The phone inside the cottage rang, and Elena recognized the specific ringtone that indicated a call from Director Chen. These calls had become more frequent lately, as international tensions increased and situations arose that required Elena's particular expertise. She excused herself and took the call, listening as Chen described a developing crisis that might require her intervention. After hanging up the phone, Elena returned to the garden where Dr. Mitchell was reading, while her daughter continued exploring the flower beds. The peaceful scene reminded Elena of why she had chosen this balanced approach to her post-retirement life. She could serve her country and protect innocent people, without sacrificing the personal connections and simple pleasures that gave her life meaning. "Do you ever regret coming out of retirement?" Dr. Mitchell asked, having noticed Elena's thoughtful expression. Elena watched the little girl discover a butterfly that had landed on one of her tomato plants. The child's expression of wonder and delight reminded Elena of why some responsibilities were worth carrying, even when they came with significant personal cost. "I used to think retirement meant walking away from who I used to be," Elena replied. "But I've learned that some skills are too important to abandon completely. The trick is finding a way to use them that enhances your life instead of consuming it." As the afternoon sun began to set, Elena helped Dr. Mitchell and her daughter pack up their picnic supplies and prepare to leave. The cottage would be quiet again, but Elena no longer felt the isolation that had characterized her early retirement. She had found a way to honor both the person she had been and the person she wanted to become. That evening, Elena sat on her porch with a cup of tea, reviewing the mission briefing that Director Chen had sent to her secure email account. Another situation was developing that might require her intervention, but this time Elena approached the possibility with confidence rather than reluctance. She had proven to herself that she could return to active duty when needed and still maintain the peaceful life she had worked so hard to build. Elena's garden represented more than just a hobby or a symbol of civilian life. It had become a metaphor for the careful balance she had achieved between duty and personal fulfillment. Like her plants, this balance required constant attention and occasional difficult decisions, but the results were worth the effort. Elena had learned that true retirement didn't mean abandoning her skills and experience. It meant choosing when and how to use them in ways that reflected her values and protected the things she cared about most.